Hey Pete, how you doing?
Oh, not too bad, Tom. How you doing? You okay?
I'm doing all right. Hey, it's your birthday today, isn't it?
My birthday, yeah, yeah.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you, and I've had a lot of them.
How old are you?
96 years old, and I'm about the oldest in my family that I know of. I've lived a long time. I don't know why. I've always went against the grain. I always ate the wrong foods. But I think working hard all my life is what done it. I think I'm not sure, but everyone asks me what makes you live and what made you live so long. Well, I always said, well, I think I didn't rock in the chair too much. I just kept on working, and that's I'm still trying. It's more difficult, but I'm still trying.
Nice. So that means you were born in 1924, is that right?
1924, that was a good year. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
What
yeah.
what do you remember as a kid? Like what's one of your earliest memories?
Well, I can remember real well when I was 4 and 5 years old. I can remember pictures that were taken just like it was yesterday. Um, it I can remember the old days, but I can't remember 10 minutes ago. But uh, no, I can remember everything that happened, just like everything I remember is just like it happened yesterday. I don't know why, but that's the
When
way.
you were a young boy, what was like one of your favorite memories that, you have that you think about?
Um, I guess that um, I don't know. St. Johnsbury was a very good town to be brought up in. It's changed a lot now. It's not the same, but I can remember all the simple things that children don't do now. Uh, I was watching a video of my granddaughter that was having a birthday, and I think that she had probably at least 35 presents. And at Christmas time, of course, we were very poor. It was I can remember some of the depression and when it was very difficult. And the town of St. Johnsbury on Christmas Eve brought you a present and a basket of food that would help you out on Christmas Day. And one year I got a pair of skis. They had straps on them, and you just strapped them to your boots. And that was the only present I got. One present, and it was secondhand. It wasn't new, but anyway, the first thing I did was build me a ski jump on quite a steep bank, and I thought I'd get a little extra push. I'd never been on skis before, but I built the ramp so that it kind of shot upwards. I went down, and my skis and legs went up in the air, and I landed on my back, and the skis went in different directions, and I had a difficult time getting my wind back. It kind of knocked the wind out of me, and I never wore them again. never,
Oh wow.
never wore skis after that. But anyway, yeah, I can. One year it was a little scooter that I used to put my right leg on and push the scooter with my left leg, and that was the present. So it I it's so different now. I used to take and on Saturday, me and my friend used to go to the dump and pick up metal and rags and stuff and sell them to the junk dealers, and we'd end up with 10 or 15 cents. Cost 10 cents to go to the movies, and um, we used to buy a big box across the road of popcorn for a nickel, and that's what our Saturday was, me and my buddy. At it today, it's nothing for a young boy that's 8, 9, 10 years old running around with a $20 bill in their purse or pocket. I don't know. But I don't know. I still enjoyed the old days better than today. I think we were. I hate to say this, but we weren't pampered and as much as the kids are now. Um, it oh well, it's
It
I'm
was
going
a
to
it was a simpler time back then, it seemed like maybe.
say that again, Tom.
It was a simpler time maybe back
Oh,
then.
sure, sure. Yeah, it was in the winter time. We went skating every night. It was uh, a fun time, um, and I I ended up going to um, a a Catholic school, Saint Gabriel School. Cheer, cheer for dear SGS. And we had nuns for teachers. They were great. They were strict. Um, I got my hands hit with a ruler many times when they checked for clean hands and fingernails, but I used to tinker on my motorcycle and my Model T Ford when I was 12 years old, so my hands was always pretty greasy. I didn't have all the cleaners they got today.
You had a Model T Ford at age 12?
I had a motorcycle. I had a 1926 Harley Davidson single cylinder when I was 12, and I had a Model T Ford that was like brand new that I traded what they used to call a cord tire bicycle, uh, and I traded even for the Model A Ford. I mean the Model T, and it was a real nice one. And of course, I broke my right wrist in three places cranking it. I shouldn't have had, I shouldn't have advanced the spark on it the way I did, because when you crank them, you have to have the spark retarded. And anyway, it kicked back on me and broke my wrist real bad. There's another story to that, but I won't go with it. It takes quite a while. So, uh,
um, wow, I didn't know that. I've talked to you many times and never knew you had a motorcycle and a car at such a young age. Was that legal or how did that work?
Oh, I used to. There was two state troopers. There was one, Fitzsimmons. He had a green unmarked Pontiac, and there was Eddie Barr had a 41 black 41 Ford, and they were the only state troopers around. So I used to take and go a couple of miles up the road with my Model T with no plates on it, and I used to do the same thing with my motorcycles. Uh, I got caught a couple of times after I got a license, and they Fitzsimmons stopped me. I was standing on the tank going down Portland Street, and he saw me, and him and Fitzsimmons, Eddie Barr was together, and so anyway, I went up to the car, and he started reading the riot act to me about what I was doing. He said, "You know, you can't tell me nothing about motorcycles. I was a motorcycle cop for many years." And he said, "You ain't going to end up killing yourself, and you better straighten up and stop what you're doing, or I'm taking your license away from you." And I said, "Well, okay, I'll try." He said, "You're not going to try, you're going to do it, or you will lose your license." But anyway, there was a couple other times that I was reported from making too much noise. I used to take and have a cutout on my exhaust pipes that where I could slide a plate to one side and open up the exhaust so that it really was loud. And but anyway, I had in my life 18 motorcycles. My next one was a 1929 Harley Davidson. It was a full size one, and that was when I was 12. When I was 13, I had another 29 Harley. They were rated like 74 and 60 and 40 instead of the CCs they have now. And so the second Harley I had a sidecar on it. It was an Army issue, and it had all of the colors and everything. It was like brand new, and I didn't like sidecar, so I sold it for $25. It probably bring now probably I don't know 4 or 5 thousand more maybe, I don't know. Uh, and then my next one was a 31 Harley, and then I had a 36 Harley that I went to Loudon with in 1941. The Hells Angels were there and everything else. Um, and then my last Harley was a 41 Harley that I had when I met my wife. I tried to give her a ride on it, but she wouldn't go. Uh, but anyway, my next ones were pretty much all Yamahas and Suzuki's and Kawasaki's and uh, others. And Harleys went up in price, so I couldn't afford them anymore. So, uh, and I also was, when I was 12, everywhere we went, my dad used to let me drive. He'd always say, go ahead and drive. And my uncle, he used to have always big cars, like big Packards, 30, 31 Packards, big Buicks. And he'd say, well, Pete, let's go fishing. And of course, he'd bring his bottle with him, and we'd head for the fishing places. And by the time we got there, he was stoned. So I'd just come back home by myself. And like I said, there wasn't any state troopers, and they wouldn't have bothered me anyway. And
Hmm.
it, I just, I used to collect also, I used to collect antique cars. I had a lot of nice cars. I had, am I going too long here?
No, no, no. Go ahead.
Well, I've had 6 Packards, a 37 Packard limousine that was like brand new, a 37 Packard hearse that I used to use picking up parts and stuff. And when we went to the drive-in Moody, the had a little mattress in the back where the kids could lay down when they got tired. And then I had a 37 Packard Phaeton, which a lot of people don't know what a Phaeton is, but it's a 4-door convertible instead of being a 2-door. And then I had another 37 Packard, and they were, oh, the last Packard I had, a lot of people live in St. Johnsbury, of course, they're younger, and they weren't living when I was. And there was a Packard dealer where Goss Company was in St. Johnsbury, where the tire company is. And they had a ramp where up to go up upstairs, and they used to keep their cars in the wintertime inside. So I went up, and I think I was probably uh, early 16s, because I went in the Marine Corps when I was 17, and I went up, and there was a 1930 Packard, a beautiful car, and the salesman came out, and I said, "How much for the Packard?" He said, $35. I said, "My car," and and oh, that car right now in them big antique car auctions would probably be worth at least $200,000. I
Wow.
sold it for 350 to a kid in Wilton after I used it a while. And I had one of my special cars was a 1931 uh, um, Peerless. I've never seen another one since. That car was like brand new. If I parked on Railroad Street, I stuck out. I stuck out beyond about 6 to 7 feet. Out beyond all the other cars. It had a jump seat between the back and the front, and it was just a beautiful car. I was coming back from Leonardville, and uh, wait, I bought that car after I come out of the Marine Corps. Uh, I was coming back from Lyndonville, and at Linden Corner, there's this car sitting in the dooryard, and it had a sign on it for sale. I stopped and rapped on the door, and he come out. I said, "How much for the Peerless?" He says, $25. I said, "Does it run?" He said, "It runs 100%." I said, "My car." So anyway, I used to just take a plate off my other one and just put it on, slipping them back and forth, and nobody bothered you then. And it was, it was that car. I'll bet you would bring $300,000 right now at the way it was when I owned it. It was just something special. And I had also that was special was a 1929, 1930, two years to it. It was a Willys Night coupe with a side mount tire. It had a rumble seat. It was like brand spanking new. It was on blocks at the railroad station in Hardwick. When I bought it, I paid $350 for it. And I researched it and found out from Willie's Night that that was one of two Willie's Nights that was ever known to him. And it was a car that was built when it was manufactured out of 1929 parts and 1930 parts. So it it could have been called 1929 or 1930. I called it a 1930, but when I registered it, it was that car was something different. There was no valves in the engine. It was called a valve sleeve engine, and it was when you went down the road with it, all you could hear is the air sucking out of the carburetor. There was no sound actually, and I sold it for $3,500, and my kids were really upset with me when I sold it. But I sold it to a an antique car dealer in Montreal, and he drove it to Montreal. I had a 1936 Buick that I sold that went to Massachusetts. He drove it to Massachusetts. I had a 36 Chevy. These are all pretty much. Uh, I had when I sold my last house there back 25 years ago. I had I had four or five, I guess, that was registered and insured and everything else. And I did restore one. It was a 1926 Dodge, and that was a lot of work. I'll never do that again, of course. I hope not. That was a lot of work.
Hey,
So
Pete, so you said you were 17 when you joined the Marines, right?
yes,
What inspired you to join the Marines?
well, we me and my buddy, uh, we was walking down Railroad Street, and there was a trailer parked right on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Railroad Street, and it was U.S. Marine Corps recruiting, and and it was a year after World War II started. It was 1942, and um, we said, "Hey, let's go in and join the Marines." And we went in the trailer, and before you knew it, we signed up and we was in the Marine Corps. and and so anyway, I was sworn in September 2nd of 1942, and and the war started, World War II in 41, and I was overseas when it ended. I was overseas when they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. Uh, uh, the first invasion we was involved with was the Marshall Islands, and then Guam. That took 64 days to secure, and then Saipan, and then the last one was the big one, Okinawa. It took 3 months to secure Okinawa. Uh, uh, it, uh, it 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 was a bad thing when they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, but it's a good thing they did because our next hit would have been Tokyo. And I understand from sources that knew that there would have been 280,000 Americans killed in that invasion. And I would have been there, and I probably wouldn't be here now bragging about all I've been doing. But now, just a quickie on back of the motorcycles and the cars. The only I didn't have much money. Uh, the only reason that I was able to buy them is because I could buy a Harley for $25. That was like brand new because you could buy a brand spanking new Harley with everything on it for $995. You could buy a brand new Pontiac for $995 in 1950, and if you wanted to trade it for a 51, it cost you $200 to make a trade. And uh, same way with everything else, it was so different. My first car was a 1929 Model A Ford, and I I bought it for $25, and I was working at a Fairground Gardens, Lester's Fairground Gardens, and I was earning 10 cents a bushel for picking string beans in the garden. 10 cents a bushel, a lot of string beans in a basket, bushel basket of string beans. But anyway, uh, I took when I used to go out on Saturday night with it. I used to go up to the gas pump on Portland Street. It was a big glass globe that had 5 gallons in it with a pump. You had to pump it with a hand pump, and uh, you took and I used to go out on Saturday night, and I used to put a quarter's worth of gas in my car, 25 cents worth. Don't sound possible, but I used to get a gallon and a half for 25 cents because gas was 5 gallons for $1. And so, anyway, it's changed so much now. It's just ridiculous. I get upset every time I go into a grocery store with my daughter and pick up something, and it's so expensive. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what's going to happen in 25 or 50 years from now. It's it's going to be pretty rough living, I think. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking and let you ask something different. That might This must be getting kind of boring.
No, no. Well, I'm curious about your Marine Corps experience, like in boot camp, even. Like, I was just talking to a buddy of mine the other night that we went into boot camp together, and kind of the thinking is that it used to be harder and harder the further you go back, and nowadays it's not as hard as it used to be. Who knows? But I was just curious what your experience was in boot camp. What, like, describe what they did to you, or what it was like. That was a long time ago.
Well, the when we joined the Marine Corps, we were sworn in Springfield, Mass, and we went to Paris Island on a train. And when we got there, we was loaded in with a whole truck full of Marines that were going to be Marines, and we were just like sardines in the back. And they unloaded, and they started that day with giving you shots. We get between corpsmen on both sides, giving you different shots, and then it went with the clothing and the shoes, and they didn't always fit, but that's what you wore. Uh, and then the first night they told us, they said, just take any bunk, and we'll issue you the proper places in the morning. And so my buddy got up on top of the bunk, and there was a double bunk, and he got on top, and I was in the bottom. We was laying there, and he looked down at me, and he said, "What the hell did we get ourselves into?" I said, I don't know, but I wish I was home. And the tears was actually coming out of his eyes. He was ready to cry. And the next morning, about 5 o'clock, they the GI cans, the garbage cans on both ends, uh, they had the duty officer and another corporal that was on each end that started slamming the covers on the cans and saying, uh, well, let me see. Oh, I can't say it, I guess, what they used to say. But they made a lot of noise, and we'd fall out and start right from the beginning, just really being. It was tough. It was tough, and I just couldn't believe at the beginning how any person could treat treat anybody the way they did. They called you all kinds of names. We had a drill instructor that was a southerner, and he hated northerners. And I can remember, I can remember that I got when we was drilling on the field. It was so hot. The sun was so hot, and I had stigmatism, and it really bothered me. I kept putting my head down. Drill instructor kept stopping the platoon and coming up to me and giving me howl and telling me to get my head up. And I told him, I said, the sun, I can't, it's too strong. He said, well, you better learn to live with it. And anyway, I'll never forget one time I guess I was pretty much in the back with when we was drilling on the field, and uh, I thought he said to the rear march, but it wasn't. And I turned around and was going in the wrong direction, and my cartridge belt with the canteen and everything around my stomach and belly was going down between my legs. So one time he stopped me. My mother sent me some stuff which they used to call pogey bait. I don't know what they called it when you was in there, but anyway, I used to share it with everybody, and there was some gum in there, and I shouldn't have been chewing gum, and the drill instructor noticed it. So anyway, he stopped the platoon, put his hand out. I gave him the gum, and he just took and stretched it out and put it on my head and stuck it in real good. There wasn't much hair there because they'd shaved it all off. But anyway, it was a real tough. It was a real tough boot camp. Uh, Nobody was ever able to escape out of that boot camp. It was swamp all around it. I was on duty one night, guard duty, and I was so nervous because I didn't know my general, what's it they call it, general quarters.
Orders, general orders.
Yeah, and sometimes the officer, the guard, used to come out and ask you questions about it, and I was nervous about that, but there was big, oh, I mean, monstrous rats that used to come out of the swamp, and anyway, one time I kept hearing something like somebody running, and I kept saying, "Halt, halt, halt," and I had goosebumps all over. And anyway, I found where it was coming from. It was a steam pipe that was going.
Wow. How long was boot camp back then? How long? How many weeks?
I don't really remember just how long it was. It seems like forever, but they used to take and uh, it. There was a bay there. I'm sure that you know which one I'm talking about. And they, when we went out on an all-day march, they'd march us out into the bay there with the rifles. We had to hook them up, hold them up over our heads and stuff. And we were soaking wet, and the water was really cold. And then you come out of there, and they double time you, and you had a pack on and stuff, and it was really rough, really rough. And just when you think you couldn't go no further, they'd say uh, double time, and you had to start running or jogging or whatever they call it now. Uh, but no, it was rough. It was rough. Uh, After I got out of boot camp, uh, I was transferred to Camp Lejeune for being transferred into an outfit that I was going to be in. And anyway, I went through. It was an amphibious. It was. We landed the infantry. They were amphibious tanks that went on land and water because they used to have trouble going over the coral reefs, and the infantry used to have to get out in the water and they'd get picked off. These tanks went over that coral reef, and we was able to bring them right into the beach. And so we had three different ones. The first one was called an alligator, and that was a real piece of junk. The second one was called a buffalo. That had a 16 cylinder airplane engine mounted on the back, and that was a little bit better, but it still wasn't good. The last one we had was called a Burke Warner, and that had automatic transmission, and it had two Cadillac engines mounted in the back, and that's what we had when we landed on Okinawa. Um, so anyway, it's we had to, for them tanks. There was a three-man crew, and you had to learn the Morse code for the radio, voice procedure. You had to learn maintenance on the tank. You had to learn to operate the tank. All three of us had to know. We had to know how to operate the 50 and the 30 and 50 caliber machine guns that was mounted on the tanks. And the tanks used to hold 16 infantrymen with full packs. And so, anyway, after we landed them on the islands, we used to work with them all the way through, bringing supplies, rations, and medical and fresh troops, and we'd bring the dead and the wounded back. And we worked all through that way, and it was it was it wasn't fun. It was uh, you know it it was scary, but you were everybody said, why is the Marine Corps such a good fighting group? I said, because they're all 16, 17-year-old boys, and they don't know any difference. They don't know enough to be scared. If you was 30 or 35, life would mean more to you than it does when you're 16 or 17. And if you're scared, you don't show it with your friends. So that's one of the things I remember. Um, it was when we hit the islands, we usually unloaded from LSTs that the ramps used to come down on about a mile out to sea, and it was always dark, and all you could see was an outline of the island. It was kind of spooky. Uh, and then we'd form waves, going in waves, and of course we wasn't the only amphibious. We was the fourth amphibious, but there was others, the sixth, seventh, and stuff. But on Okinawa, we landed uh, right by it was called Yontan Airfield, and that airfield uh, they wanted because they wanted to start using B-29s. It was a big airfield to start bombing Japan, and and they got it all repaired. And I tell you, they were going in out just steady, going to Japan. And when they was going overhead, it felt like you could almost reach the wheels. They were pretty close when they was taking off, and the ground would just shake like an earthquake. It was it was something to remember, I tell you. So Anyway, what you asked me a couple more questions.
Well, you were at sea for almost 2 years, right? Doing the invasions and all that. How long were you overseas during the war effort?
uh, say that one more time. I got my hearing aid, but
Um, you how long were you overseas
oh
during the war effort?
let me see. I went. I think I went over in 1943, and it was 1945 when when I left the islands. Uh, it was after we hit after we hit Guam. After we hit Guam, uh, it was all secured. So we took and went to Okinawa, and after Okinawa was secured, we went back to Guam. That's when they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, and and it didn't take too long because we had been overseas for quite a while, and too long.
Yeah.
it, I was on 7 different ships in my travels overseas, and I have a document that was written by one of the officers in our battalion that said that we had clocked over 40,000 nautical miles at sea while we was overseas. 40,000 nautical, that's a lot of water to go over.
Yeah.
And um, so I'm going blank now, but uh,
And so I think you were telling me once too that like your rations were like Vienna sausages or something. What was the food like? What were you subsisting on when you were over there?
well, of course, it was uh, actually, it was, let me see, it was about 2.5 years that I never slept in a building. It was all either on the ground or in a hole under the tank, in the tank. Uh, and we had K rations, is what it was. And there was either a little can of beans or a can of hash, and there was a little package of cigarettes that were either Chesterfield's, Lucky Strike, and a couple other brands that only had 3 cigarettes in it. And then there was another little container that had a few hard candies in it. And we used to open them up just to get the candy and the cigarettes. But, um, and then uh, we didn't have no milk. We had no meat, except for one time when I was on Guadalcanal. There was a ship offshore that had horse meat from New Zealand, and we had horse meat, which tasted pretty good. Actually, after I got home from the Marine Corps and got married, you used to be able to buy horse meat by 1 pound packages for practically nothing, and we used to buy it all the time. Uh, But anyway, one time on Guam, the cooks, after the island was secured, there was pigs running around, so they went out and killed a couple of pigs. So we did have some pork. And that's about the only time we had meat. The butter was in cans, and it was stick to you. It just wasn't butter. And as far as showers are concerned, we had to use salt water soap, and it didn't sud, and it was awful stuff. When we was aboard ship, the Navy was allowed to use fresh water, but we had to use salt water. And when we was set up at camp during the invasion, different invasions, they had a big a pump that sucked salt water out of the ocean and purified it. What they call purified. It wasn't that good drinking, but it wasn't salty anymore. That it was about like a almost a at least a 2 inch or bigger pipe that come from the ocean, and when it came out purified, it came out of like a little 3/4 inch pipe with about half a stream that ran into a canvas bag in the company area, and that's what we had for water. Um, they had it, it was, those islands were beautiful. They used to be, of course. It was all shot up. The trees were all cut down with bullets, and it's I right now they're all resorts, I'm sure. But anyway, I anything else about the food you want to know?
Oh no, I was just wondering, as a Marine cook, I was just kind of wondering what you were eating.
Yeah,
Um,
well, um, they what they called poop on the shingle. It was a different word they used, and I don't know what it is they use. We used to have spam and Vienna sausage for meat. They used to take the spam and they used to slice it and put it in a batter and deep fry it to be different. And so they done the same thing with the Vienna sausage, and I hated them both when I come out. We never had any ice cream, milk, or anything like that for 2.5 years. Well, for all the time I was overseas, and that was, well, it was mid 43 and 45. I was over there quite a while. After the war ended, it wasn't too long, and our outfit was discharged. And one thing right now is there was 950 troops in our battalion, and I am one of, I don't know, the last time I was talking to one of my friends that was in the Marine Corps, his father was my best friend, and he said that I was one of the last ones standing. So I took it that he meant that there was probably two or three that were bedridden or whatever. We was we went to Tampa, Florida. My son drove me. That was the last time I had gone to Florida, uh, and we was awarded the presidential citation for Okinawa. Um, if you want to see something that Okinawa was the biggest battle of the Pacific, and it was considered as big a battle as some that was in Europe, and the casualties were unbelievable. If anybody wants to look it up, all they got to do is put in the Battle of Okinawa, and at the end, I'll tell you all about it. How many? I couldn't believe, I couldn't believe how many Japanese were on Okinawa. I saw a lot of them, but dead ones, most of them. But and I shouldn't say this. No, I better not. I better not. They used to say something about a Jap. They used to call them Japs, but we don't call them Japs anymore. They're Japanese. My son gave me hell for calling them Japs, but they weren't nice people back then. Now it's a whole new generation, and they're very nice and a good place to live in Japan. I got a granddaughter and her family that was over there several years that really loved it. And but anyway, uh,
so, so you spent a lot of time overseas, and then you got out, and you
yeah,
came back to St. Johnsbury,
yeah.
Vermont. So, what did it feel like to come home after all that time?
Well, let's start when I come back on the ship and landed on in San Diego. When we landed and took off to go to Camp Pendleton, uh, is where we left from. Well, we left from San Diego, but we were stationed at Pendleton. That was between Los Angeles and San Diego. And um, what? Where was I, Tom?
I asked you what it felt like to be back
Oh,
after all
okay.
that time.
It was when we got on the buses to go back to Pendleton. It was so amazing to see all of the signs and the buildings and everything that we hadn't seen for so many years. And it we go by one place. I remember going by the Bing Crosby golf course and different things like that. And then we got back to Pendleton, and they had little trucks that came around, several of them, and they had ice cream and popsicles and milk, and we just gouged ourselves with that. There was lines at them little trucks, and when I got home, I had eaten so much ice cream that I didn't even like ice cream anymore, but I do now. But
Wow.
it was and when we finally ended up sleeping inside the building, that was very weird after not being inside of a building for so long. So, but in the meantime, I had I had uh, I was lucky enough to get malaria 3 times, and um, that that was kind of rough on me. I even had malaria after I got home. Um, but anyway, I was pretty lucky. That's about all that. Oh, I got other stuff like what they had dengue fever. Everybody got something. But anyway,
So when you got back to St. Johnsbury, that must have been a strange feeling too, right? So what was that like?
when I pulled in, uh, we went back home uh, on trains up to White River Junction, and I had to take a bus to get back St. Johnsbury from White River, and it was Greenwood bus lines. And the driver happened to be somebody I used to know. So I sat in back of him and we talked. We pulled into St. Johnsbury and it was before Christmas. And the lights, Christmas lights and everything were all on. And it was so beautiful. It was such a great feeling. Uh, my my brother-in-law and my father picked me up at the bus line and brought me home. And I don't know, everything was so different. My mother had kept my little dog Blackie, and he was so old and gray. And my sisters had grown up so that they started to develop. It was so strange for me to see them. But anyway, it was a real good homecoming. Uh, one little thing I want to say is my mother was, I guess I was considered my mother's pet. That's what my sisters say. But my mother used to, they were French, of course, and they came from Canada. And my mother used to write me letters in French, and I could return it. In fact, I still could read and write French. I learned that at the French Catholic school. And um, she I told her, I said, Mom, I said, I wished I could get a letter for you from you every day. And the last, that's when I told her when I was still overseas. And she started writing a letter to me every day. When mail cop came, it was Racine, 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 and and I used to get a real handful. And one of my buddies in one of my tents there, in the tent, he said, I didn't get no mail. Can I read one of yours? I said, sure, go ahead, pick one. So he looks at it. He says, how can I read this? I said, I don't know. You wanted a letter? Go ahead. He said, yeah, but it's not in English. It's in French. I said, well, I'll either read it to you or you just don't read it at all. But yeah, she was a great mom. Um, it was well, it was. I had a good family. Now I never could think of hitting or fighting with my brother or my sisters or anything like that. Now I don't know, families are not as close as they used to be back in the old days. They just don't. Some of them are, but I don't know. You never heard, once it was very scarce when you heard of on the old Atwater Kent radio uh, that somebody had got murdered or beat up or anything like that. It was, it was, I don't know, it was just so much different. And I enjoyed growing up back then. Um, I It's getting scary now. I don't know how young people are going to survive and raise the children. You know, when back when I was young, the families all had 10, 12 kids, at least 6 or 7. And now, how could you afford to have families like that? You couldn't. You, I, I wonder what it's going to be like 25 or 50 years from now. It's it's going to be so different. I don't know if if we all survive this problem we have. But anyway,
Um, so you eventually got into hell driving and stuff like
well,
that.
I
Tell us about
started,
that.
I started, I started um, stock car racing in 1949 at a track up to Lindyville, which was pretty much, it wasn't racing. It was just pretty much bang up and creaming each other. And if somebody rolled you, you made sure you got rolled them back, you know. And I got involved with enjoying wrecking cars and stuff. So when I started with Northeastern Speedway, I started when they had special races on the holidays. I started putting on a show. I had a set of ramps, and I used to show people how high I could go without rolling the car. I usually had 2 cars at every show, and I used to end up at least with 4 rolls completely on the back on the wheels, and uh, it everybody enjoyed it. Everybody remembers it. You know, there's a lot of the young people, of course, that's never seen that because they're all dead. All my friends are dead. I don't have that many left. So that makes it rough. It really does. Um,
Well, I mean, last year we had a birthday party for you on, at the VFW, and you had one of your favorite bands there,
yeah,
the Toasters,
yeah,
and that was a good time. It's too bad we couldn't do it again this year because of this COVID stuff, but
yeah. They
um,
promised to do it every year till I die. Yeah,
yeah. And a couple of years ago, you rolled a car. Attempting to get the Guinness Book of World Records, and you successfully did that.
yeah,
And you
yeah.
recently tried to do that again this past summer. It didn't work out as well, but you're going to do
Well,
it again next summer? Or?
uh, oh, I'm not going to fool with Guinness World Records. Was very difficult to. A lot of stuff had to be done, and I just enjoy doing it. And even though, I still get all kinds of publicity. I don't need Guinness, but last year I was going to attempt a double roll, and I only had 1 car. I wanted to do a T-bone, and the car just didn't work out for me. If the people, what I done, they enjoyed it, and I got a lot of compliments. But didn't get a chance to do the T-bone because the car was ruined the first thing. And next summer, I have a friend, a really good friend that used to have a Hell Driver show. His name is Crazy Al Sleep Hell Drivers, and we're going to put on a 2-man show at Speedway 51 next summer, the first part, and we're going to be the opening act, and we're going to have the Speedway is going to have 6 to 8 cars that we're going to use for stunts, and I just can't wait. It's going to be great, and he's going to come all the way up from Arizona and come up and spend some time, and we're going to put on a good show for him. Uh,
I'm looking forward to that, Pete.
what's that?
I'm looking forward to
Yeah, well,
attending that event.
yeah, well, I am too. I don't know why. I don't know why, but I'm just addicted to doing that. I don't have a scared body, thing in my body. I just my heartbeat, my pulse don't change at all when I'm rolling over, and I just enjoy it, and I want to get into some more serious stuff. And my friend, the hell driver, is going to set me up next summer for different things. I know it's going to be. I'm going to be doing a couple, three rolls, and then I'm going to be doing T-bone, and then a couple other things probably that we're working on right now. We're going to be doing some precision driving, and that'll be a lot of fun.
So we don't have a lot of time left, but I wanted to ask you about Priscilla, your wife. You were married for how many years?
Not we were married for 69 years. We were together for 70 years, and out of the 69 and a half years, we were apart roughly around 10 days apart that we weren't sleeping together. And she was a great wife. She was uh, I don't know, she was just an outstanding person. I was pretty lucky to have her. I I tried to pick her up when I was after I got a ring on my 41 Harley, and she wouldn't. She was walking down Portland Street, but she wouldn't get on with me. But I met her later on, and she was just, when I was in the Marine Corps overseas, I kept dreaming. I said, to myself, if I lived through this, I would think of what kind of a woman I wanted, and she filled the bill right to a T. I didn't like a silly girl. I wanted somebody serious and not afraid to work and a good mother, and she was all of it. So anyway,
Awesome. Well, Pete, we got to wrap it up here, but I just want to say happy birthday again. And it's been such a pleasure knowing you and hanging out together. I look forward to when we can go out and have our weekly dinners and drink a beer and just talk like we do.
yeah, just a quickie. I've been so fortunate. I've had a long life, and I have so many friends. I mean, good friends like you, and uh, I just want to thank everybody that knows me or whatever. Uh, Thank them for being my friends, because that's one thing that I really enjoy is having. I don't like to hate. I like to really love people and be around them and treat them like they treat me. And everybody seems to treat me so well all the time. I don't know, probably because it's a good guy. Or maybe I'm a good guy, right?
Yeah, you are. You're a great guy, Pete.
Yeah, well, everybody else is great too, like you, and it would take me hours to mention all the different names, so they knew who I'm talking about. So anyway, I thank you for doing and putting up with me through this get together.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, it's great to see you, and we'll talk soon, Pete.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Tom.
You're welcome.